Happy Saturday, everyone. Good morning and welcome into the Golden Sombrero Show. I'm Dominic Stern, joined by Ryan Blank and Cole Bradley. As always, today we'll be discussing Jackie Bradley Jr. signing with the Milwaukee Brewers. Couple of early spring training good performers, and we'll be talking about a couple other prospects that have looked good so far. And then we'll begin our team previews, our divisional previews, starting with the NL and AL East. We'll move our way across the country, doing so that, and then the final week leading up to the regular season, we'll give our full standings predictions along with awards predictions. But today we will officially start doing that. Cole, Ryan, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing all right, man. Hope you guys are doing well.
Doing all right. Tired, but another day, another dollar.
Yeah, we're all tired at this point, so nothing else about that is new. So Jackie Bradley Jr. was the biggest free agent still left on the market for quite some time, and he has officially come off the board. He signed with the Milwaukee Brewers on a 2-year, $24 million deal that includes an opt-out after the first year, so giving him some flexibility if he has a really good 2021 season to go out and make some more money again in 2022. What do you guys think of this deal for both Jackie Bradley Jr. and for the Brewers? Cole, start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal. He's, like you said, he was kind of the best or one of the better free agents on the market for a while. Definitely good for their outfield defensively. They already have Lorenzo Cain out there, but he's really going to be that much more of a big addition for them. And I mean, he can also swing it too. He hasn't done it as much as he's played defense in his career, or as good as he's played defense in his career, but he's definitely going to be a good addition for them. Again, I think I like these low risk deals. It's a 2-year deal. It's nothing crazy. I think he's worth the money as well, and he's going to fit in probably close to the top of their order. Maybe they can platoon him at the bottom of the order as well. He's a very versatile bat, and then plus he can obviously be an everyday guy in like center field, right field, left field, wherever you need him to play, he can play there. Yeah, I like this signing a lot for them. Excuse me. I like the signing a lot for him. I think the Brewers have had one of the quieter. They haven't done much, but I think they've had one of the quieter, more underrated off seasons, just adding depth. Him and Colton Wong are going to fit nicely in that mold, if you will, and I think that this is good for them. So we'll see how this pans out for them in the coming months.
Yeah, I like this signing. I think it's a really good signing for the Brewers. Now you look at their outfield. When they're fully healthy, it's Yelich, Cain, and now JBJ. Great outfield that they have there. I like how JBJ plays defense. He's one of the best defensive outfielders in the game. He's probably going to play center field because that's where his true position is, and that's where he's been most effective because he's one of the top defenders. When it comes to the plate, he hasn't had the best overall career at the plate, but last year he hit 285, so he was really good at the plate last year. Hopefully he can keep that going because if he can, he's a guy that you can put throughout the entire lineup, like Cole said, and be effective. So I think this and Colton Wong, those two signings have been very underrated, and I think this Brewers team is going to try to give the Cardinals a run for their money in the division. But I think overall, getting a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr. makes that outfield one of the better outfields in the league and gives them another another piece that they can put anywhere throughout the lineup and a top-tier defender.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys didn't even mention Avisail Garcia, who is also a pretty solid player, had a very down 2020 season. They have 4 very capable outfielders out there. I don't know where they're all going to mix up, but they now have 2 of them are left-handed hitters and 2 of them are right-handed hitters. That allows them to be able to platoon guys, and Jackie Bradley Jr. and Cain are going to be doing that in center field, and then if they need to, they can move them out to right or left to platoon with either Avisail Garcia, who's going to be playing left, or Christian Yelich, who's going to be playing right this year. So they have options, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, just because I feel like paying a guy, and they went out and they paid Garcia a solid amount of money, $10 million. Now they're paying Bradley Jr. $14 million to platoon. It just feels like a lot of money, but at the same time, it makes your team better. So you can't overpay to make your team better, and I think that's what they're doing. And I think Jackie Bradley Jr. super talented defensively, and now he's no longer in Fenway playing center field, and with the weird triangle, he's now got like a more traditional outfield at Miller Park, which is also a very big outfield. So I look forward to watching him roam around the outfield there in Milwaukee because he's so fun to watch. And there's been times where he's had very good hitting years. Like in 2016, he was an all-star. 2015, he also had a really good year. Then a 3-year stretch where he wasn't that good. But in 2018, we all remember he became Kenley Jansen's dad and really owned him. And that was cool. So he is a clutch hitter. Not the greatest hitter, but he's a clutch hitter. And sometimes that's just as important as being a good hitter. So that is it for Jackie Bradley Jr. We'll see how much this makes the Brewers better. I think they're right around a 500 team, which is where they've been the past couple of years. We'll see if they can sneak their way into the playoffs for what would be the 4th year in a row, which is pretty incredible. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that, but they've been one of the more consistent teams in all of baseball. And like we mentioned on the last episode between Cole and I, it's spring training season, and games have finally got underway. There's been a couple of highlights, and Cole, I know you wanted to talk about a couple of players, so I'll give the floor to you, then we'll go to Ryan. He could talk about some guys. But Cole, who's impressed you early on the spring training?
Yeah, I guess just first off, I mean, again, I'm as excited as everyone that games are back, and they came back this week. I was watching baseball quite a bit, so I'm glad that was going on. But I guess I'll start with a couple guys. So, and the big thing about this one is that I could actually see him getting called up this year. Wander Franco, the top prospect in baseball with the Tampa Bay Rays, had started a couple games this week. I personally witnessed his first pitch homer against the Pirates earlier this week, which I don't know if that ball has landed yet. He absolutely crushed it. He also showed a little prowess on the right side yesterday, I think it was. And I bring this kid up because I can totally see him actually getting some playing time this year. He's progressed that much. He's that good. And he's 19 years old, which is the craziest part. He's a switch hitter. He's 19 years old. He's got power from both sides. He's a freak athlete. He's really like embodying the whole future wave that's sort of up and coming in this game. And so I just wanted to, I guess, highlight him real quick because I think he's going to be a stud, and I think it's not going to be too long before we see him actually playing games for the Rays. Next one I guess I want to talk about is someone who has already sort of been up with the big league club and will probably continue to do so, is Bobby Dalbec, who had a 2 home run game against the Twins earlier this week. It's 25. I think he might be 26 actually now. We'll see. 8 home runs last year with the Red Sox in the shortened season. He only played 23 games. Hit 263, 359 OBP, 959 OPS. This kid's going to be really good. He's got really good power. He showed that earlier this week. I think the Red Sox, who again are trying to move on from losing Mookie Betts, from losing Andrew Benintendi, and now losing Jackie Bradley Jr., need some centerpieces, particularly in their order, to build around. Obviously, they have Rafi Devers, they have Xander Bogaerts, they have those guys, but it might not be too long before those guys even get shelled out too. Who knows? But I see Bobby being a huge piece in the middle of their order for a long time, and I think he showed that this week. So I think anyone who's watching the Red Sox, or anyone who knows about the Red Sox or knows about him, should really start keeping an eye on him, because the way he progresses this spring and into the season is really going to dictate how big of a piece he is with them going into the future. And I guess the next one is not really a prospect at all, actually. But Shohei Ohtani, after what was a pretty dismal year last year on the mound, obviously they had to shut it down early. I personally was like, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even let him pitch this spring, after how big of a disaster it was last season. But no surprise that he did. And even though it is spring and, these games don't count or anything, the one thing I think if you're an Angels fan that you need to be encouraged by is the fact that he was consistently flashing 96 to 100. I think it was yesterday or the day before he pitched. And he looked really good. The splitter was good. Slider looked good. Again, fastball upper 90s. Gave up, I think, a couple runs against the A's, but that doesn't really matter. It's spring. You just want to see guys have their stuff together, I guess, on the mound, and that's exactly what he had. So that's very encouraging, I think, if you're an Angels fan or just a fan of baseball, because obviously you would love to see the two-way guys succeed. Not to mention he did hit a home run that went like over the Tempe Diablo Stadium batter's eye this week. So I'd say that, I mean, we'll see. I could totally see him, floundering in early in the year here, but I think that's encouraging. So keep an eye on that. And yeah, that's the three main guys I wanted to talk about. But aside from that, I'm sure Ryan has other people.
Yeah, my main guy's got to be Joey Gallo. Gallo's hitting the cover off the ball. Dom, was that your guy?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about him. I can obviously find other people to talk about.
Gallo's been terrific so far. 3 home runs, and he has 7 RBIs. He's doing a lot. He's proving that if he can stay healthy, then he's going to be a guy that could hit 40 home runs this season. He's got a terrific swing. He's got a ton of power, and he's just proving that so far. The other guy I got to shout out is Nico Warner. He's starting to turn it around with his bat. A guy that's mainly been known for his defense. He's starting to put some hits together. Has 7 hits so far. He hit I think he's hit 2 home runs in the past 2 days. He's really starting to turn around with his bat, and that's really good for the Cubs as they're starting to trend towards a rebuild and going younger. So those are my 2 guys I want to talk about.
You're quicker than expected, which is not a problem. But Mickey Moniak, how about him? First overall pick in the 2016 MLB draft. Finally made it up to the major leagues in 2020 after an up and down minor league career. But he hit 2 home runs the other day against the Yankees. He's certainly a guy that could help out the Phillies because one of their positions where they lack like the locked-in player, like, they got Bryce Harper in right. They got JT at catcher. They got Rhys Hoskins at first. It's center field, and that's where Mickey Moniak has played the majority of his minor league career. Very good defender, very athletic guy, strong left-handed bat, but the bat's been pretty inconsistent in the minor leagues. And if he can keep this up, he could maybe see himself on that major league roster at the beginning of the year, possibly playing in center field. And that would be huge for the Philadelphia Phillies because they're a team that is in a very odd spot where they don't have a strong farm system, but he's certainly a part of the stronger part of it. And their team's in a win-now mode, but they're on the outside looking in of the playoffs, supposedly. So Moniak can certainly help that out, and that would be an interesting part because the NL East is still up for grabs, and if Moniak can help them out, that would be huge for them. And another prospect, I mean, this is just a guy that I've watched. His stats don't pop out at you so far, but CJ Abrams, shortstop for the Padres, he's been killer for the Padres, and he's only 20 years old, but he feels like he's like 25. He's just so smooth in the field. He's made a couple of diving plays already. He's going opposite field, hitting the ball in the gap, just hitting hard line drives that are outs, which is still fine. And he's impressed me a ton so far this spring, enough to think, well, the Padres could put him on the major league roster, but there really is nowhere to put him because the team is already super loaded. So he's been impressive. And then an impressive major leaguer for me, I'm surprised, Cole, you mentioned this guy. We were texting about him the other day. Madison Bumgarner had one outing against the Angels. It wasn't against their A lineup to say, but he pitched 2 innings and struck out 6 guys. So if Mad Bum can get back for the Diamondbacks, that is huge because I don't want to say he was a big part of the reason why they weren't good last year, but they were expecting him to be good last year. In the beginning of the season, he wasn't. Then part of the reason was because he was hurt. Then he missed a good chunk of the 6 game season. And then when he came back in his final 2 starts, he was a lot better. So if he can be a good pitcher for them, that all of a sudden helps out the rotation a ton because it's not just our guy, Zach Gallen, the milkman. He's one of those guys that's in your division, but you can't hate because he's such a baller. And that 1-2 combo could be a pretty solid combo for the Diamondbacks that keeps them in the wild card race because we all predict them to be a wild card team. Now that team isn't as good per se as it was going into last season because Starling Marte, who they traded for, got traded away. Robbie Ray, who's a very talented arm, on the Toronto Blue Jays now. So it's not as good of a team, but they still have a ton of talented players like Ketel Marte, David Peralta, and I like Carson Kelly behind the plate. He hasn't lived up to the bill. A couple of prospects coming up: Dalton Varsho, Josh Rojas. You never know how those guys are going to do, and a couple of bullpen additions. So it'll be interesting to see where the D-backs end up, and especially if Madison Bumgarner can perform for them. So, guys, anyone else to talk about for spring training, or should we move on to the NL and AL East? No. All right. So let's start with the American League East because I feel like that's like the easier division to predict a little bit. We got right around 40 minutes left in the show, so we'll try and spend 20 minutes on the AL East and 20 minutes on the NL East. So, Ryan, what are you looking at in terms of the AL East? Because this has always been one of the best divisions in baseball, given the Yankees and the Red Sox. And then the Rays are consistently good, and the Toronto Blue Jays are on the rise, and then the Orioles, they're still in the process of rebuilding. So what do you make of this AL East before we get into like ranking teams and stuff?
It's the Yankees to lose, as per usual. The Yankees got to stay healthy, and that's the key. Can they finally stay healthy? Can Judge finally play a full season again? Can Stanton stay healthy? Can key guys like Gleyber Torres turn it around after a rough 2020 season? That's the key for them.
Cole, what do you think? Oh, sorry.
I think that if there's one team to really challenge them, it's the Toronto Blue Jays. That team is really good. I really like what they did this offseason by getting George Springer, adding guys, bringing back a guy like Robbie Ray. I think that this is a team that is going to be a wild card team in the Blue Jays. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me if they overtook the Yankees if the Yankees have injury troubles once again. So Yankees got to focus on staying healthy, but the Blue Jays are a team that are up and coming and a team that I expect to be in the playoffs for the second straight season.
Yeah, I'm sort of with Ryan on this. I agree. I think it's the Yankees to lose. I think it's been that way for a long time. But the one thing I'm not really convinced about yet is as good of an offseason as Toronto had, the pitching is still very suspect. It's not the best. I think they have some good prospects who they can throw into the mix. Nate Pearson is probably going to make the opening day roster. And I could see him taking that huge step and being really good in his second year, but I'm still just not really sold on them. So I'm going to have to see more from them before I really say, okay, this team's a playoff team. Because I still think that they're there in terms of that. But if their pitching is not good from the get-go, then it's going to be hard for me to sit here and say that I think that they're going to be a lock for a playoff spot. I think Tampa Bay, as much as they lost, is still going to be competitive. I think they're still going to find a way to compete. They're probably not going to be as good or anywhere close to as good as they were last year. But I'm still looking at them as sort of like this. Ooh, how do I say this? Like the San Francisco Giants of the AL East. You know, they're going to compete. They're going to win games. They're definitely going to have moments where they're going to surprise you because, again, they've lost so much, but they still, I think they're going to compete. I think Kevin Cash is going to put them in a good position to compete. But yeah, I think that's definitely like your top three right there. And then I think, obviously with the Orioles, they're still growing. They're still trying to prime themselves, get themselves into a good enough position where They can someday compete. And again, it's probably not going to be for a long time still, but there's going to be growth from them, as there has been every year. And then Boston, I think it's just sort of, redefining roles and figuring out who fits where best. They're going to get Chris Sale back. They're getting Eduardo Rodriguez back. That's big for them. The bullpen, I don't think really looks much better than it did last year. It improved, but I don't really think that it got really that much better. So hopefully for their sake that they can sort of figure it out. And then obviously, we already mentioned Jackie Bradley Jr. They lost him. That entire outfield from the 2018 championship winning season is now gone. And that was arguably the core of the team, and the reason why they did so well. So I think for them, again, it's just going to be kind of just defining roles and figuring things out. But aside from that, I think the top three are pretty clear cut. And, it's going to sort of go from there. But I'm not going to really be sold on the Blue Jays yet. And I'm also not going to really be sold on the Yankees yet because, like Ryan said, I mean, they have injury troubles every freaking year. It's like clockwork. It's just a matter of time before somebody goes down, unfortunately for them. But they're going to have to prove themselves this year. And I think the Blue Jays are going to have to do the same thing. And it's going to happen early on. You're going to start to see early on, okay, this team looks like a team that's going to be a playoff team. If the pitching, sort of finds its groove in July and August and, figures it out from there, then yeah, I think this team's a playoff team. But I think early on, you're going to start to see like early signs that this team is going to either be, in that mix or not. So that's what I'm going to be looking at.
Yeah, very interesting division because, like you guys mentioned, very clear favorite in the Yankees. And then the team that went to the World Series last year, that got a little bit worse this offseason. A team that's on the rise, a team that won the World Series just 3 years ago, and then the Baltimore Orioles. So it'll be interesting. So do you guys all have the Orioles finishing in 5th place in this division?
Yes. Yeah.
Ryan?
Yeah, Orioles are in 5th.
Yeah, I agree. But I think they're on the rise. I think they're a team that in a couple of years can certainly be competing for the East. And it'll be fun to see Trey Mancini back this year after he beat cancer, didn't play at all in 2020, which is not a bad thing at all because it's only a 60-game season. So that'll be fun to see. And another player I like on that team, Anthony Santander, very solid switching outfield bat. And we'll see if he can put up the similar numbers to what he did in 2020. 4th place, I had the Boston Red Sox. Do you guys have the same thing?
I do.
Red Sox.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love Alex Verdugo. I think he's one of the best players or most underrated players in all of baseball. Obviously, not the type of player that Mookie Betts is. I'm not going to try and justify the trade. But I think that people are giving the Red Sox too much grief for that trade. They traded 1 year worth of Mookie Betts and the Dodgers extended him for an outfielder that they're going to have for a very long time, assuming that they don't make the same mistake they did with Mookie. And that could be interesting. I don't know who they're going to play in left, but they also did pick up Hunter Renfroe. And you guys know that Hunter Renfroe is my guy. He hit that bomb off Julio Urias in the World Series. So we'll see if he can revitalize himself because he had a bit of a down 2020 season. And then I'd expect bounce-back seasons from both J.D. Martinez and Rafael Devers, but I agree, 4th place. The pitching staff is bad. Also, Alex Cora returning to manage them this year. So that'll be interesting to see. Was him cheating why his team always looked good, or is he actually just a really good manager?
I think that for the Red Sox, they're just gonna have to continue to find ways to continue to find their roster because you're seeing them trade away a lot of big pieces. They traded away Benintendi, trade away Betts, and now they lost JBJ. Like Cole said, that was, or one of you said, I can't remember, arguably the core of that team. And now Devers was not good at all last year. Bogarts has been the guy. He is the guy now. Can he make up for any slack from other guys? Who knows? But I think that their pitching is also very suspect, kind of like the Blue Jays. Yeah, they got Sale coming back, but off Tommy John, what kind of Chris Sale are you getting? That's the thing. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, he looked good in his first spring training start, but it's not going to be the same. So I think that there's a lot going against the Red Sox, and they got to continue to find their roster. So it wouldn't shock me if they start shipping off other guys via trades.
Yeah, and Chris Sale underwent Tommy John surgery late in March, so he's not going to be back for a little bit into the season. And then even then when he comes back, like you said, Ryan, it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds. So third place, here's where things really start to get interesting. Cole, I'm going to go to you. Do you have the Rays or the Blue Jays in third place in this division, and why? Do you have them behind the other team?
As of now, I have the Rays in third place. And the reason being is because they got worse and the Blue Jays got better, and that's simple as that. And I currently see the Blue Jays as a better team, where it stands right now. But again, I think it's very close. I think it's neck and neck. I think both teams are honestly in the same position right now. I think the Rays have a stronger pitching staff, obviously, than the Blue Jays do, but I think the Blue Jays bulked up the offense and it looks a lot better. And right now, because of that, and given what they have, even though it's not much in the starting rotation, I think they're just a little bit better. With that being said, again, I'm going to have to see how they perform in the first couple months. And that's really going to dictate to me, okay, this team's playoff caliber, this team's not playoff caliber. I think the Rays are still definitely on the fringe there. I could easily see both wildcard teams coming from the AL East. I could see that. I don't think it's that plausible, but I mean, depending on how things go, I could see the Rays and the Blue Jays making the postseason this year. So yeah, right now I have Tampa at third just because of how much they lost, but I could easily see Toronto being in third as well.
Ryan?
I have the Rays in third. I think it's just that they've lost a lot on their starting rotation in Snell and Charlie Morton, and then their offense just isn't there. They don't have the power. They don't have the type of offensive caliber that Toronto has. And yeah, you can say Toronto doesn't have that great of a starting rotation, which is true. They don't have the best, but they've got Hyun-Jin Ryu. They've also got Pearson coming up. They got Robbie Ray, Tanner Rourke. There are guys there. Is it great? No. But is it fine? Yes. So I think that for the Rays, they've got the pitching. They just don't have the offense, and I think that's going to come back to hit them. So I'm going to go with the Rays in third, Blue Jays in second, because Blue Jays got the offense, and they have a fine pitching staff. The offense is going to be able to put up runs every single night.
Yeah, that lineup compares to the Yankees and how good it is. And I agree with you guys. I have the Rays in third place, and losing both Blake Snell in the trade to the San Diego Padres and then losing Charlie Morton to free agency are two big losses for the rotation. And we all know that Kevin Cash and the Rays, they don't use their rotation a ton. Very rarely does a pitcher ever see the seventh inning for the Tampa Bay Rays. And it works for them. There's no other way around it. The people who were criticizing them, for like saying, analytics are dumb, analytics are broken, because of that one time where they pulled Blake Snell and it fell apart when it was very obvious that he shouldn't have pulled Blake Snell, are idiots. There's no other way around that. And it's worked for them. And I think they'll find a way to make it work because, as we all know, if you look at this team on paper and you look at the Blue Jays on paper, you're going to take the Blue Jays by a mile, and it's not really close. But like you guys mentioned, this is a very close race, and that's because of what they do in Tampa Bay, and they use guys, and they find a way to get the best out of their players because they platoon them and put them in situations to where they can succeed. I just don't know if they can find a way to get them to succeed as much as that lethal Blue Jays offense because it's getting better. And we'll see if Bo Bichette can stay healthy because he was their best hitter last year, and he missed a lot of time. I mean, obviously other guys like Teoscar Hernandez and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. stepped up in their absence, so that's why they were still good. But if Bo Bichette was healthy last year, they could have made a little bit better of a shot at the division and definitely could have finished in front of the Yankees last year because they were only a couple of games behind them. And that's obviously because the Yankees were very unhealthy and just had a stretch where they were terrible last year. but it's going to be interesting. I don't think we need to talk anymore about the Blue Jays because I think we've already discussed them enough with talking about them. And then for the Yankees, like we said, we all think they're the clear-cut favorite to win the AL East. But how much do we think they win it by? How many wins do we think they win? In Vegas, you see their team total around 96, 97 wins. So, Cole, what do you make of the Yankees? We know that you're going to pick them to win the East, but by how much and how many wins do you think they'll end up getting?
Yeah, so like you said, I think the Yankees are the clear-cut favorite. We've already mentioned it. We've kind of gone back and forth on this. As far as how much I see them winning this by in the margin, I could see them winning 100 games. I could see that. I don't think they will, though. I think they'll win around 95. But again, I could see them get those 5 extra wins. But as far as the margin, I guess, that's tough to say, I guess, here early on. But if things go right for them and they can stay healthy, I think this is a team that could just blow everyone else out of the water. I could see them winning the division by at least 5 to 7 games, maybe even 10 plus games. I could totally see that happening. But I think it's going to be, again, early indications are going to be, can they stay healthy? Is Corey Kluber going to be a solid piece for them? I think that's going to be a telling sign early on as well. Because, they're going to get Severino back, it looks like. It looks like he's set to throw next week. Obviously, Garrett Cole is Garrett Cole. There's not much to be said there. But they still lost Masahiro Tanaka. They lost James Paxton. Tanaka in particular was probably one of their more solid arms since he was there. So I think they lost a little bit in the rotation. I also think they lost quite a bit in the bullpen. Tommy Kahnle alone is a pretty big loss for them. But I could easily see them, if they can stay healthy, if guys like Judge in particular can stay healthy, and even Corey Kluber and Luis Severino and all those guys can stay healthy, I can see this team winning the division by at least 7 games. So I guess we'll go on best case scenario here. If everyone's healthy, I see them winning the division by at least 7 games.
Ryan, same question goes to you.
Yeah, for me, it's tough because can they stay healthy? If they can stay healthy, this is a team that's going to easily win this division, and I would say by 8+ games if they're fully healthy. But this is a Yankees that we're talking about. We don't know if they're going to be healthy. And knowing their track record, they're not going to be healthy. So if they're healthy, I think they run away with this division by 8+ games, and they do end up winning 100+ games in the season because that lineup is deadly. They've got a fine pitching rotation. They've got Severino coming back. They've got Garrett Cole. They've got Corey Kluber. Yeah, Severino and Kluber are going to be guys to watch to see how they bounce back from injury, but I like the Yankees. That lineup is just insanely deadly, and if Luke Voigt can continue his dominance from last year, watch out. He was fantastic last year for the Yankees. So if they're healthy, 100+ wins, and they win that division handily by 8+ games. If they're not healthy throughout the season, I still give them the division, but I'd probably give it to them by 3 to 4 games if they're not healthy. So that's how I see it. And then if they're not healthy, 93 to 97 wins at most.
Yeah, this lineup's too good not to win the division, and that's why, of course, I have them winning the division. I'm not as high on the Yankees as a lot of other people are, though, because I have serious concerns with this pitching staff. And these numbers are bad. Garrett Cole is obviously Garrett Cole. He's going to be fantastic. He's going to be a Cy Young finalist, I'd assume, like he normally is. He's going to be great. Then, like Cole mentioned, you lose Masahiro Tanaka, you lose James Paxton, and then another name you didn't mention, J.A. Happ. They lost J.A. Happ. And there's a ton of arms right there. And going from a 60 to 162 game season is a lot. And especially you want to try and keep as much bearing off that bullpen and rely on the starting pitchers and just have a ton of depth there to be able to move forward into the season so you're not injured for the majority of the season like they have been and not injured going into the postseason. And I have serious concerns because, like you mentioned, Corey Kluber, he pitched 1 inning in 2020 and pitched, I believe, about 55 innings in 2019 due to injuries. So injury concerns are off the charts there. Jamison Taillon, who fantastic pitcher they acquired from Pittsburgh, but underwent a second Tommy John surgery. So serious injury remarks there. If he could be healthy, that's fantastic. He looked pretty good in his first outing. Corey Kluber did not in one of his sim ball lineups. I saw a lot of tweets about him getting rocked. So that's not good for them. And a couple of young other arms. DV Garcia got crushed by the Phillies the other day. And then Clark Schmidt, he's a young arm. I haven't seen much from him this spring. King, I haven't seen much from him this spring. So they have talented arms, but serious concerns. And then Domingo Herman with his domestic violence stuff, and his teammates are saying, hey, listen, he's our teammate, so I'm going to support him. But this dude doesn't belong here. That's basically what they said. But since he's good, he's going to be here, which is, of course, the most Yankees thing ever because they have Domingo Herman and Aroldis Chapman on their team. So there's 2 of those guys right there. And then Luis Severino coming off the Tommy John surgery. He's not going to be 100%, and he's not going to be there until a month or 2 into the season because he, of course, underwent it a little bit earlier than some of the other guys last season, like Chris Sale and Noah Syndergaard. And their bullpen just isn't as good as everyone makes it out to be. Chad Green was really good a couple years ago. He's still a very solid bullpen arm, but he's not what everyone's made him out to be. Aroldis Chapman has definitely shown his signs of wearing off. You can only throw 100 and 101, 102 and be successful for so long in your career. It's a wear and tear on your arm. He's still a very good relief pitcher, but he's not that dominant closer. Like they've said, greatest closer of all time, which is complete BS. Not even the best closer in the history of the Yankees. And there are certainly, I could probably name 10 other guys that I'd rather have closing games than him. And then they lost Tommy Kahnle. He, of course, had Tommy John, so they let him walk. He signed with the Dodgers. Zach Britton's one of their best bullpen pieces. They traded Adam Ottavino to Boston. Like, this bullpen just isn't as good as a lot of people make it out to be. So I have deep concerns about this team, but at the same time, that lineup's really good. I think they win right around 95 games. Now, I think the Blue Jays get around 87, and the Tampa Bay Rays are right around 84, 85. So they win this division with a pretty steady margin, but it's not going to be as easy for them as a lot of people make it out to be because the lineup is going to have to absolutely carry this team. And like you guys mentioned, they have a pretty significant injury history in that lineup with Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Hicks, and then their infield has done a pretty good job of staying healthy, except for Luke Voigt has some health issues, but he stayed healthy in 2020. You really saw what he was capable of doing. So that's going to wrap up our discussion for the AL East. Let's move over to the NL East. And Cole, I'll start with you. What do you make of this division? Because this division is wild. The Mets, they went out and improved their team so much this offseason. The Braves were 1 win away from going to the World Series. Marlins won the postseason last year. And then the Nationals won the World Series in 2019. And the Phillies, well, they're the Phillies, but they have a ton of talent. So what do you make of this division?
I mean, the best way to sum up the East for me right now, in the NL that is that at least right now I could see there's 4 teams in here who I could see making, well, not all at once, but I see 4 teams that's, potential playoff teams. That includes the Nationals because I liked their offseason. I thought it was really underrated. I thought not enough people were talking about it, personally. But I guess just to start off with the obvious ones, I mean, the Mets and the Braves in particular, I think are the favorites in this division right now. The Mets, they brought in Steve Cohen, changed the whole management of the organization. They got rid of the owners. Everything's different now. The culture's different. Everyone wants to be there now. It's not like before. And that's a huge thing for me because, I mean, 2 to 5 years ago, if we were talking about the Mets, it would be, yeah, it's the same old song and dance. It's, a lot of talent, a lot of potential, but, it's a toxic situation. Guys get hurt. There's just there's not a lot of faith there. And so that's my biggest problem. But now I don't feel like I need to have that. And after they go out and get Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco, and they get out and James McCann, and all these other guys, there's definitely a vote of confidence there. So I think the Mets, barring they stay healthy, that's always the huge thing with the Mets and the Yankees, are going to be really good this year. Atlanta, same thing. I thought going out and getting Charlie Morton and Drew Smyly to help bolster that rotation after what we saw in the postseason last year, they were getting carried by that rotation, but that rotation was doing absolutely everything it possibly could, every single night to make things happen. They had Ian Anderson, the rookie, shelling out 7 innings, something that in a regular season, I'd tell you that's blasphemy. Why would you do that? But that's what they had to do. I mean, their rotation was very thin. I see them obviously definitely making a jump because they improved the pitching staff. It looks a lot better now, if you ask me. It looks a lot deeper. And then, on the topic of, the Phillies, we've talked about it a little bit. I see this team as a playoff team as well. I think they have the potential to be that way as well. We talked about Mickey Moniak at the top of the show. Maybe he gets called up this year and helps lock down that center field spot for them. They're a little bit of a question mark. They went out and shelled out all that money to JT Realmuto. We'll see if he can continue to stay as the same guy he is. I think they're kind of like the Rays in my mind, where it's like, I'm going to need to see a little bit of them before I'm like, okay, this team's going to be good enough to make the postseason. I just, as we sit right now, it's tough for me to say where they land, but we'll get to that here in a second. And the Nationals, again, I thought they had one of the more underrated off seasons of any team in baseball. They went out and they got Josh Bell. They went out and they got Kyle Schwarber. I think they look pretty solid right now. They'll be getting Juan Soto, probably, cross your fingers, back at the beginning of the season, barring no false positive COVID test. And I think they look really good. If guys like Scherzer and Strasburg can kind of return to form and stay healthy, and the bullpen as well can sort of get back to like what it was in its postseason in 2019. And then the Marlins, I think, are an interesting case. I don't see them as a playoff team. I think a year ago was sort of just, it was a byproduct of the season. With the expanded playoffs, I think they were just they were one of those teams that just sort of kicked it into high gear late in the year and was like, okay, we're going to get in. And they just kind of barely squeaked in. I don't really see them doing that this year, but I don't think they're the worst 5th place team in baseball either. I don't even know if I see them as a 5th place team. I could easily see them as a 4th place team. They got Adam Duvall, which I think is really going to help them out. I actually really like that signing. I think Adam Duvall is one of the more underrated power hitting outfielders in baseball. Yeah, he doesn't really get on base much, but as far as power is concerned, there's not too many guys who have as good a power as he does. So that's definitely a plus for them. And this is going to be an interesting division. But like I said, I think there's 4 teams who are potential playoff teams in this division, which is crazy to say, but that's just the way I see it. So it's going to be exciting to watch.
I agree. 4 of these teams can really make a run and get to the playoffs. It's tough because this is the best division, top to bottom overall. And love the Braves. Getting back Ozuna, bringing in Morton and Smiley. I think both of them are great. I like what the Mets did. Upgrade a catcher with James McCann. Great bat, solid defender. Get Carrasco for that rotation and Frankie Lindor. Terrific. My worries are, how does Marcus Stroman come out and pitch after opting out? How does Syndergaard look when he returns from Tommy John? There's a lot of factors that play into what goes on with guys coming back. And it's not just the Mets, it's throughout the entire league. So I think the pitching rotation on paper looks great. How they perform, it's a little bit iffy. We have to wait and see. Great lineup. Got Conforto. Got J.D. Davis, Jeff McNeil. Got a ton of talent. Got a ton of power there. I need to see more from Pete Alonso. I don't think that he is a guy that should be just home runs or strikeouts. And that's what he kind of was last year. So I need to see more from him. And I think that this Mets team has the potential to overtake the Braves and win the division. But we'll see. I agree with you, Cole. The Nationals had a great offseason. Bringing in Schwarber, getting Josh Bell, and they still have a great pitching rotation. So I really like what this team has done. And I think that they're going to try to make a run. As for the Phillies are going to be good. They're going to be a team that's going to be at least at 500. Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, JT Realmuto. There's a ton of talent there. Didi Gregorius is back. So I think that they kept their core, and now they're just going to have to bring up some guys that are ready from the farm system to see if they can make an impact.
Yeah, and I think that you guys say 4 teams can make the playoffs. I do believe the Marlins are capable of getting there. Now, I think they're the 5th most likely team in this division too, and I'm going to predict them to get 5th place in this division. But that rotation is really solid. They got a solid 3 there with Alcantara and then Sixto Sanchez and Pablo Lopez. Pretty solid trio right there, and they're going to have more solid young players coming up soon. And then you guys mentioned the offseason for the Nationals. They brought in John Lester as well, who I don't think is that good anymore, but certainly adds some depth to that rotation and can be a really solid 4 pitcher because they have Strasburg and Scherzer 1 and 2, however way you want to put them. Then Corbin at 3. He struggled last year, but we know that he's going to be really good. Coming back in a full season, that's just what's going to happen because he was so dominant for them in 2019, especially in the second half of the season, where they were just rolling through people, and then they, of course, went on that historic playoff run. It'll be interesting because, like you guys mentioned, the Mets. And Ryan, thank you for bringing up the question marks of the rotation. Everyone just seems to be ignoring this. Syndergaard is not going to be coming back until the second half of the year. And even when he does, he's going to be coming off Tommy John. And I'd imagine he won't be the same type of pitcher. Marcus Stroman did not pitch in 2020. How is he going to rebound? Carlos Carrasco hasn't pitched a full season since 2018. Of course, in 2019 was dealing with leukemia. He beat that. It's awesome for him. Came back. In 2020, he pitched the entire year in 2020, was really good, but it's a shortened season. Is he going to be able to bounce back because he hasn't pitched a full season since 2018? So a lot of question marks with that rotation. And then Taijuan Walker, who they recently brought in, he's going to be an interesting X factor for them because he's a super talented pitcher, was really good in 2020, but of course, really short season. He didn't really work too deep into games. And the Mets, they're a huge wildcard team because they could easily win 100 games, but they could also win like 85 games if everything goes wrong for them. So they're just such an interesting, and they're an interesting team every year. This is always a weird division. And the Braves, they're the Braves. I mean, they retained most of their lineup. Duvall did leave, but I don't think that's going to hurt them too much because they'll have Ozuna in left field this time. And obviously, you had to take someone out, given that pitchers are going to be hitting in the National League this year. And I think Duvall is not a bad candidate for that spot. Okay, so Marlins in 5th place, guys. I think we can agree on that. And then 4th place. So here's where things get interesting. So I'm going to have the Phillies here. I think they're going to be a team right around 500. Do you guys agree? Phillies in 4th place?
I disagree. I have the Nationals at 4th.
All right. Why do you have the Phillies in front of the Nationals?
Because, I mean, even though I'm still suspect on them, I do think as it stands now, I see them as a better team than Washington. I think if guys can really break out and get hot, I think their infield is a little bit of a question mark, but I think that there's a lot of talent in this organization. I think and they're going to show why. I think they're a playoff team. I see them as more of a 3rd place team. And Washington, again, I like where they're at, but it's going to be one of those teams where I'm just going to have to see, I think they'll compete. I just don't think that they're in the best position at the moment. So I see the Phillies currently as it stands as a 3rd place team.
I'm putting the Phillies in 4th because of their pitching and some holes that they have throughout the infield, mainly at second base a little bit. Third base, they got Alec Boehm, so they're set there, but it's mainly second base and a couple of outfield spots where I'm a little hesitant on, and it's their pitching. The bullpen, they added some arms, but it's still not great by any means. And their rotation isn't anything to write home to mom about. So I have a lot of question marks with them. So I'm going to put the Phillies in fourth, but they're a team that's still going to compete. That's just how good the NL East is this year.
Yeah, like I said, I have the Phillies in fourth. Like I said, I think they're a 500 team. Like they're a good team, and I think Cole, you can agree with me on that. They're not that much better than 500, and you have the Nationals right there. I have the Nationals in third place. I think they can win like 85 games. I think that rotation is just so superb, and they have two of the better players in all the National League, of course, with Juan Soto, who is the best hitter in baseball. I will hear no other arguments against that. And then Trey Turner, one of the more underrated players in all of baseball, really talented shortstop, had a phenomenal 2020 campaign after being really good in the 2019 season after missing the first 2 months or month and a half. He then ran away and was just so good, and he was part of the reason why they started to take off. So, Cole, I assume you have the Phillies in third, and Ryan, you have the Nationals in third, right?
Yeah, I have the Nationals in third. I just think that rotation is so good. It is. They've got two of the best pitchers in baseball when they're fully healthy. Then got Corbin, who was terrific for them in the second half of 19, like you said, Dom. And I think he's going to bounce back. And then Lester, I think, is going to be a solid 4 for them. So I really like their rotation. Trey Turner is one of the most underrated baseball players in the league. And I think that having him after the year that he had last year, that's terrific to have. Then you got the best hitter in baseball. I agree with you, Dom. Juan Soto. Just such a pure swing, a great hitter. I think he has as great of a chance as anyone to win MVP this year. Excuse me. Then adding in guys like Schwarber, Josh Bell. Those two have so much power that just adds to that lineup. I really like what the Nationals have done, so I'm going to put them in third.
All right. And second place, yeah, we got the Mets or the Braves. I assume we're all going to take the Mets. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes.
Yeah, Mets in second.
Yeah, and I think this team is certainly capable of winning the division. I think they can win at least north of 90 wins. That's certainly where I'd have them. But I think too highly of this Braves team, and there are certainly less question marks about them going into the 2020 season or the 2021 season than there are at the Mets. I've already discussed my concerns with the Mets pitching staff. It's going to be a good pitching staff. There's no denying that, especially when you have Jacob deGrom as your ace. Like that already puts you in the conversation of being a top 10 rotation. And then when you bring in the other guys, they certainly put themselves in the top 5 conversation and certainly up near the top of that list too. So top 5 rotation, you guys already talked about the Mets, all their pieces. And Ryan, I agree. I think Pete Alonso's going to have a good year. I don't think he's much more than a home run strikeout walk guy, but he does that at an extremely
doubles. I think that helps.
Well, but I just don't know. His swing is so violent that it just creates the launch angle, and it's either home run or bust. Which, like I said before, I think is a fine model, and that's just who he is. And
there's some hitters there's some hitters that's just how they operate.
Jorge Soler.
And if you're really good at that, it doesn't matter because you're already a very productive player. So you don't need to be that. And I think that he's a interesting storyline for them, especially on offense. Then we have the Braves winning the division. You know, that lineup is gross. Ronald Acuna Jr., Freddie Freeman, Marcell Ozuna, Travis d'Arnaud, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, Christian Pache. Like, they're just a really good lineup. And to mention this pitching staff, Max Fried was super good last year. Ian Anderson, he's going to be one of the favorites for Rookie of the Year this year. And then they also have Mike Soroka coming back from an injury. And then, like Cole mentioned, Drew Smyly, Charlie Morton coming in. And they still have some young prospects that could fill in for those guys if they have injuries, and Kyle Wright and Bryce Wilson. Kyle Wright did not pitch well in Game 3 of the NLDS, but in Game 4, Bryce Wilson was really good. And that was, of course, the last game the Braves won in the 2020 season before losing Games 5, 6, and 7. And the bullpen, they got some talented arms out there. They still got Will Smith. They still got Chris Martin. I still have AJ Minter. Is Shane Green still on the Braves? I think he is.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Melanson, he is gone. He's a Padre now. So still have a pretty solid bullpen. Tyler Matzek, still a Brave. Very talented team. I think the sky's the limit for this team. Could certainly see this team playing in the World Series later this fall. Just an incredible team. But where do you guys think they end up in terms of winning total?
Yeah, I think this team is arguably one of the best, easily. Because look at it, they've got the lineup in Acuna, Freeman, Albies, Ozuna, Darno. That lineup is insane. And then they upgrade that rotation with Morton and Smiley to add with Max Fried and when Mike Soroka comes back eventually, even though there's some question marks when he comes back, but still, I think he'll be a solid pitcher when he comes back for them. And I think that the bullpen, yeah, they lost a couple pieces, but I think it's still solid. Like you said, Dom, they've got A.J. Minter, Chris Martin. I like this team a lot. I think they've got the power, they've got the speed, they've got the offense, and now they've got the rotation. So I think this team is north of nearly 95. I give them 95 to 100 wins this year.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I just think that they're, as it stands right now, at least the second or third best team in the National League. I don't think you can really argue that. I see them winning at least 100 games personally. I think they're one of those teams. So I think as much as this National League East is loaded, I think that you still have to consider the Braves, give them the respect they deserve, and consider them the clear-cut favorite, because I really don't see anyone else who is at the moment. I think every other team who we mentioned is a playoff team or a fringe playoff team still has something to prove. They still have to go out and they still have to show that. I think the Braves have already shown that. Like you said, they were one win away from getting to the World Series against arguably the toughest Dodger team that has ever been assembled in the history of the franchise. And they were one win away. So I think that says a lot about the Braves. Even though it didn't go their way, I think they're going to play with a chip on their shoulder this year. They have the reigning MVP. They've got some of the best young, talented arms in the rotation that there is across baseball. They have Acuna. They've got Kristen Pache. They've got Marcelo Ozuna. They've got Austin Riley. I mean, there's not a whole lot of holes with this team. And you combine that with a great manager in Brian Snitker. And so I think all that together, it just makes this Braves team, it sets them apart from the rest. I think this is easily a division winner. I think they easily win at least 97 to 100 games.
Yep. So let's call this 2 minutes early. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Golden Sombrero, whether you're watching us live on this Saturday or you're listening to us on blazeradioonline.com. We thank you for tuning in. It's baseball season, guys. Games have officially started. We're going to start to see better lineups as spring training gets to go on, and teams are really starting to get going in a little bit, getting ready for the season. It's exciting. I made it out to a game last week. Would highly recommend for anyone who is in Arizona or Florida. It was fun, socially distanced. You don't have to worry about getting crammed in by people. It was certainly fun. So that's going to wrap up this episode of the Golden Sombrero Show. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll come to you live next week on Saturday and then Monday on blazeradioonline.com. Talk about more baseball, and we'll be previewing the NL and AL Central, so it'll be Ryan Land.